Hello, this is Ken, and thank you for tuning in to the Model Building and Retirement channel. In this episode, we're going to show you exactly how I built this Revell 1967 Plymouth GTX. Beautiful car, but not without its problems. We had a few problems along the way. Let's get into it right after the intro. Sponsored by Model Makers Workshop. Need parts for your next model project? Model Makers Workshop has you covered with the best aftermarket accessories around. And by Gaahleri, your one-stop shopping for all your airbrush needs. Okay, so this time it is a Revell kit, 67th Plymouth GTX Hemi. Haven't built a Mopar in a while, so it's time to get one of these done. Especially for my friend Chet, who keeps bugging me to build a Mopar. So it looks like a really nice kit here. I've had this one for quite a while, so let's do an unboxing and see what comes in the kit here. I see it's molded in blue. Okay, so let me get my razor blade here and open up this package. Okay, so that's interesting. Not only is it molded in blue, but it's molded in a blue metallic. So literally, you could polish this car up and not even paint it. But that's not the way I'm going to roll. Interesting, though. I've not seen that before. Okay, so nice looking body. Of course, everything's blue metallic. Decent looking interior. Under part of the chassis, nice details, looks pretty good. Front and rear suspension parts. Nice door cards, engine block. All kinds of little pieces, hood scoops. Decent hood. That's weird too, the tires sort of have a rainbow look to them. That's kind of strange. I don't know if that's an age thing or not. But they got a little bit of a profile to them. But yeah, they're kind of rainbow colored. I've not seen that. Okay, decent looking chrome tree. Console. Separately applied windshield wipers and door handles. Set of rally wheels, or Magnum 500s. I'm not sure what they call them on the Mopar side of things. Red light lenses here. That's interesting. They didn't bag the glass. It just happens to be on the bottom. So it's got separately applied headlights and marker lights and nice clean looking glass. So I'm going to get that in a bag and keep that separated. Got the nice Revell instructions that we've come to love. This one's not as detailed. It doesn't have that whole list of parts and stuff, but I don't really need that. So it looks like good instructions. Decals, you can put red lines on your tires, and it's got some black stripes, which, you know, I would paint them on if I was going to do that. Illinois state license plates. Got the 426 Hemi sticker for the air cleaner. So very good, very good. Okay, so I got the body all sanded and washed, and it took very little prep work, very little. About the only place there was a mold line was on these two quarters of the windows back there. Very little. So then I just scuffed up the paint a little bit. So basically it's ready to go to primer now. But even though this has separately applied door handles and windshield wipers and side mirrors, they're not pinned. And you know, you don't want to have a really beautiful paint job and then try to glue a door handle on there. And even if you did, and even if you got it on there correctly, if you're going to take it to a show or anything like I do, it's not going to hold up. It's going to be so fragile, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to just flat out lose it, and not only have it fall off, but you ain't even going to find it again. So I'm going to pin them And I do have a video about pinning, but I'll show you what I'm going to do. So this is 15 thousandths of an inch piano wire. And I got this at Hobby Lobby, I believe it was. So it's very thin, very thin. So I matched that up with micro mini drill bits, 15 thousandths. And I do have links in my description for all the tools I use. So there'll be a link for the drill bits as well. So what I'm doing is on the parts tree here, you got your door handles, very tiny little fragile things here. And I got this little thing here. This is an airbrush tip cleaner. So it's tapered to a very sharp little pinpointy surface here. And on the two door handles, I just kind of poked an odd right in the middle to help guide my drill bit. Now you have to be so careful because these drill bits are so small that they break easily. In fact, I think I got like 6 extra sets of drills because it seems like every model I go through them. So anyways, pin vise, get your drill bit in there. And I'm aiming for right in the center of the meatiest part. If you look, the meatiest part is where the push button would be on the old handle. So I'm kind of going midway through that here. And I'm having a look in my magnifier while I got you looking on camera. So you get your drill bit started and you just spin it. And it doesn't take much. It starts pulling material right away. And what I'm doing is, this is what a pin vise does. See how this here is spinning? So if you hold that against your palm and this against your car, you could just turn the body of this and it will spin. Because you don't even want a motor. This is going to be too hot and spinning way too fast to even have a motor on it. So anyways, you just drill in there, but you have to be careful not to drill all the way through. Okay, so I'm going to just test it once in a while because I'm going to be gluing this wire into that. So I just want to see if I can get that wire to stick in there at all. See how that's stuck in there? Now obviously that wire is way too long, so I'm going to trim that back. But that's all you need, is that little bit of pinning. I'm not going to use my sprue cutters, but I'm going to cut that longer than I need. And then I'll trim it later. So what I'll do is I'll put a little super glue in a cap and dip my little wire in that cap, and then I'll stick my wire into the door handle here, okay? Until it sticks. And I'll have a picture. I'll have a picture attached to this video so you can see that a little bit more detail there. Okay, and then so we're going to have to drill for where that's going to go on the car. So you want to definitely look at a reference picture. Looks like it goes right above the door lock. There's a molded in door lock there. So on the body, I'm just going to go above that door lock. Don't push on that drill bit because it'll break, but it is pulling up and drilling up plastic very easily. Now it will load up a little bit with plastic. You can just stop, clean it off a little bit, find your hole and get going back into it again, because it doesn't take much to clog the blade. I'm not pushing, I'm not bending. It isn't going to take anything to break that drill bit. Okay, I'm all the way through. Just going to reverse my drill bit to pull back out. Hopefully don't break it. Okay, so you can see there's a tiny little hole there. I'm going to get it right back in there. And I'm just going to hone it out a second time. Okay, we're all the way through. Okay, and then you can just take your wire and just make sure it pokes through that hole. And it does, see it's going all the way through. So you're gonna have your interior in there. So once I get this glued into the door handle, I'll trim this to about like 1/8 of an inch. All you needed to do is just a dab of glue and stick it in that hole. And I'm not going to pin the front of the door handle because that's way too fragile. So I'm only doing the back thicker part of that door handle. That should hold it in place. Worst case, if you dislodge it, it'll just droop, and then you can just turn it back up again like a hinge. Next up, the chrome tree also has separately applied windshield wipers, and you can see in this photo I had drilled and pinned pivot points on that. They are very fragile, so you got to be very careful with that. Then I also drilled out where they're going to go onto the car, and same process as the door handle. Very fragile though, those bits, so keep some spares on hand. It may be overkill, but I have quite a few. And here's a picture of the finished pinned wiper. And then finally we have the driver's side mirror, and it's the same thing. Very fragile, but I'm going right through the thickest part, right up through that stem up into the mirror. So you got to be very, very careful with that. Just take your time. And then I stick my wire in there with a little dab of glue, and I will trim that down to about 1/8 of an inch long. And then I'll decide where that's going to sit on the car. Pick out my spot there, and I will carefully drill out the hole on the body as well. Once I'm all the way through, I will bag all my parts just to keep them safe until they're ready to be used. Okay, so finally we're at the booth, and we're going to get the first paint on the car, which is going to be primer. And I'm using Mr. Surfacer 1000. First I start out with a very light little mist coats, getting all the nooks and crannies and the hard to get areas. And then I'm going to give it 2 light to medium coats. I'm going to go ahead and speed this footage up, but I'll keep it intact so you can see the process. Once that primer had cured overnight, I gave it a very light sanding with some 5000s Trizac just to knock down any dust marks or any bumps or lumps or whatnot. It didn't take very much prep at all. I did run into a problem though. I went ahead and painted it with 3 coats of yellow. And I let that cure for a couple days, and I started to sand and prep for polish, but I noticed the paint was a little bit translucent. Yellow just does not cover extremely well. So then I went with 3 additional coats of yellow, but I rushed it a little bit, and I didn't wait long enough between flash time, and the basement was a little bit cold. I probably just shouldn't have gone for it like I did, but I ended up with the crazing issue, which required me to just strip the entire model. So the method I used for stripping was soaking in brake fluid for about 5 hours and agitating about every hour and a half to slowly remove that paint. I do have a link in my description for the video that shows that in greater detail. So once I had the car all stripped, I decided I was going to do a vinyl top on the car this time around. And this car really lends itself to a vinyl top quite easily because it already has all the trim at the bottom of the vinyl roof. And the only thing you need to do is to simulate the seams for the top. So for that, I'm using Evergreen Styrene number 101. It's 10 thousandths by 30 thousandths strips. And I'll also be using Tamiya extra thin cement to glue the styrene into place. So what I do is I cut the strips longer than I need for the roof. And again, I have the reference picture above for a guide as to where to place it. But I cut it a little bit longer than I need to because it gives me a place to hold on to it. And I'll line that up. And once I get lined up, I'll just put 1 dot of glue right about in the middle. And I'll do that to both sides. And I'm going to let that just cure up for a few minutes before I continue on. So once that's cured up on both strips, I'll then very carefully look at it, make sure everything's placed good, and I'm just going to start putting a little dot down to tack it down the rest of the way, and I'll put a little pressure on that outside edge that's overhanging the roof to kind of hold it into place. You do want to be careful not to use too much glue because the styrene will melt quite easily, because that is what styrene glue does. And the other precaution is you don't want to like hold that strip down while you're gluing it with a finger or anything, because you will melt a fingerprint right into it. Don't ask me how I know. And that's one of the reasons I overlap the roof like I do. Okay, so once that glue is fully dried and cured, I take my X-Acto knife and very carefully, right at the edge of the window trim, I will place that blade directly down on the thin strip, and I won't cut it by sawing it, but I'll just kind of press down and rock the blade on it. It is so thin that it cuts through so simply, but that way I don't risk scoring any part of the roof or the car there. And once I cut all the way through, it just, snaps right off. And then I'll just repeat that process on all four corners until I get a nice clean cut. Okay, so now that glue has set pretty good. So the next thing I do is that profile is just a little bit out of scale. It's too thick. See, that's one of the reasons I wanted that to glue down really good. So I am going to take some 400 sandpaper, wet sandpaper, and I'm going to just sand over the top to thin that line down. Because remember, it's not a piece of trim, it's a seam in vinyl. And that's what we're trying to simulate. So I'm concentrating right on top of that, consistently going across the entire thing. And you can compare it to the other one. Got a ways to go yet. I'm paying extra attention right at these edges here to smooth them down so that when I do my bare metal foil later, that they are not interfering in any way, shape, or form. Okay, it's getting close. I'm going to sand that down a little more. It's probably something that I can't explain to you, but okay, so it's 10 thousandths thick. I'm probably sanding it down to 2 to 5 thousandths thick, just so that it'll still show through when I do my textured paint. It'll still show as a small little rise there. And now what I'll do is, let me get a picture. I'll get a picture of the one versus the other, the one I haven't sanded and the one I have sanded, to give you an idea. Okay, so now that I got that profile the way I want it, that was 400 grit sandpaper. I'm just going to go over it with a little 800. Okay, I'm very satisfied with that, so I'm going to get this car all cleaned off, and we're going to go ahead and shoot primer once again, and I'll be using Mr. Surfacer 1000. And even though it's wintertime, we're having an unseasonably warm day, so I'm going to spray that outside. It's just a spray can primer, and you've seen it all before, so I'll skip that on the video, and we'll be back. Okay, so the car's been primed, and I let that set overnight. The can actually says that you can top coat after 60, 90 minutes, but I let it go overnight. Now, because I put 6 coats on the original paint job using the Sunfire Yellow from MCW number 6862, I was worried I didn't have enough paint left, but I happen to have some Butternut Yellow number 6505E from my 67 Olds 442 paint job. So I'm just going to mix these two together, and it's just going to change the shade a little bit because they are both pale yellow colors. Okay, so I'm going to mix up the paint now, and I'm using a little measuring cup that I pre-marked at 10 milliliters for my spray size, and that is going to be mixed 1-to-1 ratio with paint and Mr. Color Leveling Thinner, and then I'll be adding 10% or 1 milliliter of the enamel hardener to the mix. So first I put my thinner in, then I follow with my paint, and then I will get a clean pipette and I will put my hardener in there. And I will dispose of that pipette because once you've touched anything to the hardener, it will harden all your paints and ruin them. It has a shelf life of only 4 hours at that point. Okay, so now that I have my thinner paint and hardener all put into the cup here, I'm going to just stir that up really, really well, make sure it's fully blended together, and I'm going to let that sit for about 5 or 10 minutes before I go to spray.
Okay, so back at the booth, it definitely feels like deja vu. It feels like I just did this about a week ago. Anyway, doing a test pattern on a spoon just to make sure everything's flowing real good. And I'm going to end up going with 3 coats to cover the car. And I'm going to do, a light mist coat to get all my nooks and crannies done and covered first. And once that's done, then I'm going to go over with 3 medium coats. And I'm going to allow about 5 minutes flash time between coats. 10 minutes if I get really wet. That's generally safe enough with the enamel. And I'm spraying with about 20 psi pressure and a 0.3 millimeter needle and nozzle combination. And just going to overlap my passes and make sure my coverage is really, really good. So I will speed this footage up for you. Okay, so once I had the body all sprayed, I moved that off to the side and I cleaned that enamel paint out of my brush using lacquer thinner. And I switched over to my water-based Kaleido paints and started with their metal colors. And I did just one continuous paint session and I just rinsed with clear water in between all my colors before I fully cleaned my brush. But I started with aluminum, moved on to the stainless steel color. Then I switched over to the orange for the engine block. And then finally I went with their satin black primer for all the rest of the black parts. I'll go ahead and speed this up. Okay, so I have allowed the paint to cure overnight, and it came out really, really nice. I didn't even have any flaws on the paint whatsoever, just the slightest bit of orange peel. So I'm just very lightly going to sand that down with some 5000s Trizac, just to smooth it out a little bit before I go to clear coat. And then just as I was getting ready to go to clear coat, I realized I made the same mistake twice. Because on the original paint job, I had forgot to put the hood scoops on the hood before I even started priming. And then I had the opportunity to strip the car and start all over, and I knew I wasn't going to make that mistake again, but I did. So just before clear coat, I realized I didn't have those hood scoops on. And so I was very paranoid about using any super glue at this point because I didn't want to get it on my paint and not be able to get it removed. So I used UV resin and just very carefully glued them into place, and then used the ultraviolet light to set them into place. And it seemed to work pretty good. So got those into place, and then we went to clear coat. Okay, so it is time to mix up my clear coat, and I'm using MCW 2K clear enamel. So the clear enamel is number 1017E, and the hardener for that, it's a special clear hardener just for the clear, and that is number 1017EH. And the mixture is going to be 2 parts clear to 1 part hardener and 1 part Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. So I got some spoons out here, and I pre-marked my cup a little bit here, and I'm going to use like 7.5 milliliters total mixture, because I'm going to put about 2 nice wet coats onto the model. So start with the Mr. Color Leveling Thinner, and I'm going to put 1.87 milliliters into my cup. And I didn't have a 1.87 milliliter. I had a 1.25 and a 0.62, so I'm using both of them to get that number. You don't have to be exact, folks, but for demonstration purposes, that's what I'm doing here. So I'm adding my thinner first, and remember the mixture is 2 parts paint to 1 part thinner and 1 part hardener. So this is the Mr. Color Leveling Thinner going in. Okay, then once I get that mixed in there, I'm going to add my clear, and for that I'm doing 3.7 milliliters, which is going to be half of the entire 7.5 mixture. So I'm going to dump that in there, and then finally I'm going to break out my hardener and put another 1.87 milliliters of hardener into there. Okay, so to summarize, for a total mix of 7.5 milliliters, that is 3.75 milliliters of clear, 1.87 milliliters of thinner, and 1.87 milliliters of hardener. And you're just going to stir that up and mix it up really good. And now you only have a shelf life of about 4 hours, so you got to use that paint up and then throw it away. Don't put it back in your bottle, you'll destroy your paint. And also make sure you do not cross-contaminate that pipette with anything else either. Okay, so let's get off to the booth. So we're back at my favorite place, and that's the booth, and testing out on a spoon here a little bit. I am spraying about 20 psi pressure with a 0.3 millimeter needle and nozzle combination, just making sure the paint sprays out nice and smooth. And I'm just going to get all my edges first, but then I'm going to go with 2 medium wet coats on the hood and body. right, so now that the clear coat has been allowed to cure for a day or two, I am carefully sanding all my window trim once again. I try to keep that smooth between every coat of paint so that your bare metal foil lays on nice and smooth on there, because I am prepping to now paint the vinyl top texture paint onto the car. So before I mask, I'm just cleaning up all that trim one last time. And I'm just using like 800 sandpaper, wet sandpaper. Okay, so next I'm going to mask the entire car off camera, but I'm going to be using my frog tape, which is a nice low-tack tape, and going to mask everything off, and we'll be back right after I get that taped up. Okay, so I'm all masked off. Very careful to make sure that I covered everything that I don't want painted black. And I did as close as I can around the window trim. And, you know, it's very difficult to get everything covered there really well. So, but as long as you can get your sandpaper in there and sand your trim, like here, for example, I'll be able to get a stick in here and smooth that out after my vinyl goes on there. But I did minimize it where I can. Okay, so now the trick is everything's been masked off. Just got to press it all down. And when you get to the booth, press it down one more time, because you don't want that black getting through to your base coat. All right, so we are pretty good to go here. I'm going to dust that with a anti-static brush. Going to mix up my black lacquer. Half a bottle here should be good. I'm not sure. It's going to probably take 2 coats, maybe 3. And that is shoot right out of the bottle. So I know it's thicker stuff, so I'm going to use a 0.5 millimeter needle nozzle combination because it does spray out kind of tough out of your brush. But I'm going to turn my brush flow down, or I'm not going to pull full throttle. And I'm going to dust that in for color first. And then probably once I get my color everywhere I want it, I'll probably back off on my brush and do some kind of medium dry sprays across the top. So, but I'll have it on camera so you can see how I'm doing that. Okay, meet you at the booth. At the booth again, spraying the textured black lacquer. So I'm using my TG fan tip airbrush, 0.5 millimeter needle nozzle combination, and I up my pressure to about 25 psi to push that product out because it is quite thick. So first I'm trying to dust on the color, and in hindsight, probably would have been better off to start with just a pre-tinted black roof using something like a Tamiya semi-gloss or whatnot, so that you don't have to worry about getting the color on there, but just the texture. Anyways, you'll see here, I'm going to speed the footage up a little bit, but I just kept going at it until I had nice uniform texture throughout, but the coloration was a little bit transparent. So I'll clue you in when I do that, but I switched over to Tamiya semi-gloss black X18 to finish the job, and that did a really nice job. So we'll speed this up and take a look at that. Okay, so I let that paint set up for about a half hour and then carefully started pulling back my mask. And wherever I remove my tape, I pull back at a hard angle, if you can see there, instead of pulling straight out away from the paint. And that will reduce any chance of pulling up your paint layer from below. But as long as you prepped your car really good and cured all your paint and that, you should not have a problem. But that's one of the things I like about the Frog tape is it's a nice low tack tape. I would not use blue painter's tape at all because that is much stronger. So, okay, so I'm just going to carefully unmask this.
Okay, so I didn't lift up any of my underlying paint or clear coat, so that's good news. Checking around here, I didn't miss any of the vinyl where the vinyl needs to be, but I do have a couple spots along the window trim that's going to be a little bit rough here, and I'm going to have to come back and do some really nice fine sanding there before I do any foiling. But it looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to let that cure up before I mess with it anymore. So our next stop will be letting that cure up, doing some fine sanding, and then we'll move on to polishing the body and then finally foil. So we'll be back. Okay, so another thing I'm working on here is panel liner. Now this Tamiya black panel liner, it says that it's not meant to be applied over enamel. Well, that's precisely what I have here. I've got enamel base coat and enamel 2K clear on the model here. But I have found that if you're very careful, and I haven't sanded or polished or anything yet, so this is the stage I do it, is I'll load up my little detail brush, and that little detail brush they give you is great. And I'll very carefully get it right on the edge like that and let the capillary action do its thing. And I'll take a little Q-tip and sop up any mess that I make there immediately. But what I'll do is I'll apply this and let it dry, and then I'll begin my sanding and polishing. Or if you've already done that or you don't need to do any sanding and polishing, a Magic Eraser does a pretty good job after this is dried. So it's one of those things where, you know, something says it's not compatible, but it is. But these little dots, I'm not really going to be worried about them. I mean, if you can, sop it up. But if I try to sop up too tight in there, I'm going to begin sopping up what's in the groove. And that's not what I want to do. So because I haven't sanded or polished yet, it's a perfect time to do this because I can clean up my mess. So I'm just going to go around. You can see just how fast that capillary action works. Really cool stuff. Okay, let that dry up. Okay, so I wanted to stop and talk about something real quick here. So I'd already mentioned that I kind of screwed up with these hood scoops on the hood. And then when I started taping it off, I decided that they weren't even lined right. So I broke it off, re-glued it. So I'm making some pretty good blunders here. But that's what I want to talk about. You know, especially to all you people like myself that have just returned a model building or picked it up for the first time, is we're not master builders right off the bat. And you just have to accept that. If I wanted this to be a master build car, I'd strip this down once again, sand it perfectly, and just go for it again. But I'm doing it for enjoyment, and I still want it to look good. So I did not like the stripes that I was mentioning in the first place. And then I tried to go wider to cover my blunders, and I didn't like that look either. So I am going to black out my hood and cowl area. Even though the factory car didn't get that, it's just my choice. It's my way to save the model. And that's what I wanted to say is, it's your model, build it your way. And you know, if you're not going for a master build, and I already know that this car is not a master build because I've, you know, I got my share of blunders on it. But it's okay to just improvise, you know, if you want to, because it's all about fun. It's all about fun. And I think if you do it right, you could still take it to a show. You could still share it proudly, you know. And if somebody criticizes it, oh well, you know. Okay, so anyways, I did that. You know, I'm gonna black it off, and I'm gonna use some. I'm gonna use the Kaleido matte black primer to do my matte black, because I've already tried that on the seats and the underbody, and I like the look. And then here I had already stripped. This came chrome plated, the console, which I don't know why. I mean, I can understand chrome plating some of the trim or whatnot, but I stripped all that and in Awesome, LA Awesome, totally awesome, and stripped off all my chrome. So I got my valve covers, which have sort of a textured look, just like the factory did. So as long as I'm squirting that black or shooting that black, I'm going to hit the valve covers and the console. But I'm also going to drill out for my spark plugs, because the Hemi is one of the easiest cars to do ignition wiring on, because you don't have to get in between the tight spot between the headers or whatnot. Your plugs are going to go right into the center of the valve covers. So I have my little pin vise, and about the same size as my wire, and I'm just going to carefully drill out each one of those 4 holes before I paint. That way, in case I slip or scratch, it won't look bad on the paint job. So just get it in place, carefully spin and drill. Just don't push too hard, because you'll snap it off, like I said at the beginning of the video when I was pinning my mirrors and wipers and whatnot. But enjoying the hobby, and when you know that it's not going to be an award-winning car, hey, just improvise. Fix your mistakes the best you can. And I don't care if I'm factory. I don't care if somebody says that ain't right. It's right for me. Maybe it's a day 2 car. Maybe it's a, you know, 5-year-old car. Maybe it's 1972, and that's what you did. People weren't going for concourse restorations in 1972. They were repainting. Once again, it's because I'm not a master builder, but I like these pre-wired distributors because they have a really nice looking, authentic looking distributor, and you don't have to drill it out and glue each of those individual wires in there, which I'm just not that good at yet. Maybe someday I will be. Okay, that fits perfect. Okay, so off camera, I'm going to drill the rest of those, and then I'll meet you at the booth.
Okay, so back at the booth, I'm using a 0.3mm needle and nozzle combination, and I'm using Kaleido Satin Black Primer, and adding just a couple drops of their retarder reducer to the bowl, and that just helps flow that paint a little bit better. I'm spraying about 25 psi pressure. So I'm going to go 1 light coat on everything, and then 2 medium to wet coats, and that includes the engine, the console, the hood, and the cowl area. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this footage up, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so then I carefully unmasked to reveal the masking and see if I have any bleed through, and very little bleed through. It actually looked really good. Wasn't 100% happy with the hood itself, though, because you can slightly see the sanding marks from where I did my repair work, but I'm going to roll with it. But there's the finished product with the cowl and the hood blacked out. Not factory, but I think it's a decent cover-up. Okay, so next up I decided to detail out the grille and taillight panel a little bit. So I started out with some Tamiya clear orange for the inbound headlights. I just like that look. Some people did that back in the day, some did not. So that's going to go under the headlight lenses. And then I'm also going to use some black India ink, water soluble, and I'm going to use that to paint into my my grill area. It's just a little bit darker and more bold than the Tamiya panel liner, and I'm just going to brush that in nice and carefully and fill all the grill areas. And then once that totally dries up, I'm just going to lightly burnish the very top edge of that with a Q-tip just to expose the front chrome ribs, the high point of the grill. All right, so once I got the grill all painted, I set that to the side to dry, and I turned my attention to the wheels using the same India ink. And the inside of the Magnum 500s the inside gets a little bit of black there, so that's what I'm doing here. And once I let that dry, I did the same technique as on the grill. I used a Q-tip to lightly burnish wherever I had paint where it didn't belong, because the paint does not stick real good to chrome, so it's pretty easy to clean up your mess by just burnishing off where it does not belong. Okay, and here I'm burnishing off that tips of the grill like I was talking about here, very easily with a nice rigid Q-tip. I just like that look. You don't have to do that if you want it totally blacked out. And then I turned my attention to the front bumper, and I painted some Tamiya white into the turn signal lenses. And once that dried, I took just a little drop of the Tamiya orange to simulate a light bulb in the bumper before I attached my lenses. Okay, then working on the tail panel, I decided to break up that chrome look a little bit by masking off and spraying some Kaleida tungsten in the center of the taillight panel, and then I'm going to burnish off the letters there, and that just kind of breaks it up a little bit, looks a little bit better. So next up, it was time to apply all the lenses to the model. And I picked up one of these little bead pickers from Hobby Lobby. This was a suggestion by many of my subscribers because I was using a blue tack before, but it's a bit too sticky. So this has got like a light little tack point on it. And here's a picture of it holding one of my little lenses there. It's not a very strong hold, but you know, it's enough to get it into position. And then I just used a little cap of diluted Mod Podge and put like 3 drops around each one of my headlights to set them into place. And then when everything was dry, I used about a 50-50 mixture of Mod Podge and water and just went over the top of the lenses, and that helps seat them in a little bit better and also makes them appear a little bit more glossy. So it worked out real well. Okay, so next up I detailed out the dashboard, and I used a little toothpick with some Fusion Firm and just kind of rub that toothpick along all the high ridge areas there to kind of give it a look like some chrome trim. And what I'm going to do now is use a little bit of my UV resin and pour that in a little cap with a toothpick, and I'm going to begin filling the little lens cavities where the gauges are all going to go, and just going to add that little bit by little bit with a toothpick until I build up enough to fill it. And then I'm going to hit it with the UV resin light for about 3 minutes. And then we'll see what the finished product looks like. And as you can see, it gives it a real nice looking lens appearance. Okay, so next up I did all my bare metal foil off camera for my window trim and whatnot. Then I took some quick shine furniture polish and brushed on 2 coats with a nice flat brush onto the vinyl top, and it gave it a really nice sheen. It was looking just a little too flat, and I think that looks much more realistic. And then I also brushed that onto the upholstery of the interior as well. So next up, we're going to go ahead and assemble that interior. And this is what we ended up with. Just a standard black interior, no real frills, a little bit of chrome trim, that's about it. Okay, so next up was the glass, and I just held that into place and used a little bit of Mod Podge and kind of welded the seams together by just tucking that glue right up along all the seams. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll just hit a couple spots there and let it set up for a few minutes so the glass won't move around on me, and then I'll come back and finish the glue job on it. But the Mod Podge works really, really well, and it dries clear. So once the interior was assembled, I completed the engine assembly and did my distributor wiring, which was quite easy on this one being a Hemi engine. So it's going to now speed up the process. We're going to just begin assembly. So the first up is I'm going to put the interior tub into the body. Okay, so to assemble the interior, I just turned the body upside down, put it on a nice towel to keep it from being scratched, and just very carefully set that into place. And this was uneventful. Everything slid right into place really nice. And I just put a couple dots of glue on those two little back locating areas there, and two on the front by the firewall. So next up was radiator support. Got all that installed and glued into place, and then I married the chassis up to the body. Okay, so for me, this is usually the moment of truth. It's one of the tougher parts for me for some reason, but I did marry it together. It didn't fit too horribly bad. I did have to pry the body open a little bit to sneak it in, and the engine fitting up through that engine compartment was a little bit tight as well, but all went fairly well. All right, we are down to the final few pieces, and this is where pinning really pays off because you got that nice pretty body. You don't want to get a mess everywhere with glue or whatnot. So I just put a little dab of super glue right on the wire itself, stuck that in the hole, positioned it, and when that sets up, that's going to be fine. I don't need to glue the other side of that. Okay, then we got the driver's side mirror. Same thing, just a little dot of super glue on that pin. Carefully place that into place and adjust it, and you get about 10 seconds work time, to get it positioned into place before the glue starts to set up on you. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle. The passenger door handle. Same thing, a little dot of glue goes right into that pre-drilled hole. Take your time, don't get any glue anywhere, and just swing that around to the right position and let that glue set up for a few seconds, and you're good to go. All right, so we are going to go now to our final reveal, and that's what we'll see next. And here we are for the final reveal. All in all, I would say this is a nice kit. I really had no issues other than my paint snafu, and that was my fault, not theirs. And then, of course, I forgot to put those hood scoops on, which kind of gave me a little bit of a problem here trying to solve that. But other than those two things, the kit went together extremely well. Very happy with the build quality, the appearance of the car. Really like the fact that I went with the vinyl roof, and the interior looks pretty good on there too. And of course, the only thing I did from factory was the flatted out black hood, but I think it looks okay. It's got 1973 plates on it, so the car's 5 years old and had a repaint. That Hemi looks really nice there, tucked in the engine compartment. Did wire the spark plugs on that. All in all, very nice kit. I recommend this to anybody. And one final side shot of the car there. Well, I thank you for joining me on this build. It was a lot of fun building it. Like I said, the problems that happened were my fault and not the kit's fault, so I do recommend this kit to anybody. A lot of fun building it, so we're off to our next build.
See you next time.